Now, we will talk about the another aspect in the leadership, and that is the crisis situation. That is, whenever there is a crisis situation, then how to work on this crisis leadership, formulating a crisis plan, the 3-stage crisis management plan, pre-crisis planning, leading during the crisis, adopting after a crisis, and the 5 steps crisis risk assessment model, research paper, case study, book recommendation and references as usual is there. So, whenever we are talking about the crisis is a low probability, but high impact event that threatens the viability of an organization and is characterized by the ambiguity of cause, effect and means of resolution, right. So, therefore, in that case it is the always there is a low probability will be there and for the high impact event, right. And in that case it is the belief that decision must be made swiftly. In the crises are the omnipresent in today's environment, that is true, everywhere these crises are existing. So, there is nothing like this that is the it is arising first time. Crises are indeed damaging to an organization if not properly managed, right. So, therefore, whatever the crisis keep on emerging in the organization, that has to be very professionally handled. If it is not professionally handled, then it will damage the organization and in the long term, because what happens, that is the suppose there is a people crisis. So, people crisis will be maybe for the short time, but during that short time that leadership is not there of the organization will suffer, and these sufferings will be carrying the long term impact. So, crises come in many forms regardless of the nature of the crisis or the type of organization. What they will all have in common is the stress and pressure they place on the organizational resources and systems. So, therefore, in that case if it is not properly managed, right. So, then they will have the stress and pressure as the outcome of this the existence of crisis is there. Now, when we talk about the crisis leadership, so is about the being prepared with a plan to follow when a crisis occurs. So, what the crisis leader does, he is well having the planning and well prepared. So, it is about the role of corporate leaders in crisis prevention and the preparedness is there. So, effective crisis leadership is about having the foresight and proper pre-crisis planning for managing a crisis. So, therefore, in that case it is becoming totally different. That is, the effective crisis leadership is about having the foresightness. So, what type of the leadership is there, whether the leadership is having the foresight or not, and the proper pre-crisis planning is there or not. So, here it is the always when we talk about the prevention and preparationness of the crisis, right. So, always there is the foresightness is there, vision is there. So, leader understands that this situation is going to arise and then he has to tackle the situation in advance itself. There is a great need of the leaders from all walks of the life to show that they possess the skills and competence to lead during times of crisis. So, that particular competence is required, that if the crisis arises they will be able to manage. So, proactive organizations have found it prudent to designate a specific individual or unit with the task of scanning and monitoring the internal and external environments for potential threats or warning signs of the crisis is there. So, always there is a scanning and monitoring is there, and about the internal and external environments are there, and whenever you are doing these analysis of the internal and external environment. So, naturally you will come to know about that particular the potential threats or warning signs are there. For example, whenever we are talking about this TWAS matrix is there, threat, weakness, opportunities and the strengths, right. So, therefore, always we talk about the SO, strength and opportunities, and then the strength and threats, right, and weakness and opportunities and weakness and threats are there. So, here monitoring the internal and external environments. So, these opportunities are normally the internal, right, and whenever we are talking about the weaknesses of the threats, so they are external, right. So, always try to get, that is the we are able to match these strengths with the opportunities, right, to maximize, and these weakness with the threats to minimize is there, right. So, and what we plan? We plan to develop the leadership that is the in this situation, in the crisis situation. So, whatever the threat is there to our strength, that has to be well planned and prepared. So, prevention and preparation is the formula for this. So, if you are well prepared and you are not, you are having the prevention, then definitely you will be successful. So, what are the different essential competencies are there? So, craft a vision. So, formulate an overarching vision of crisis management for the organization. So, that is a crafting a vision is there. Then the set objectives. So, establish the strategic goals, and the program objectives are there for crisis management is there, right. So, always have these set the objectives for the your goals, right, whatever the strategic goals and programs will be there, so that you can manage the crisis. Formulate, execute and evaluate crisis plan. So, therefore, coordinate the creation of a crisis management plan, right. So, manager is required to develop this particular the skill of the planning in the skills, that is the he is able to develop this execute and evaluate that particular crisis plan is there, right. Then the communicate, establish a communication plan for notification and mobilization when needed. So, always there will be a communication plan will be there to communicate is there, and whenever there is a plan for this communication, right. So, whatever so people, your team should know that what is the issue is there, what are these the crisis in this crisis situation, who will contact to whom, who will be the nodal person, who will be taking care of this particular problem, and from where they will get the resources. All this communication, right, that is about the mobilization of resources, right, main, machine, material, money, method, minutes, all six M's which are important in management. So, that mobilization will be communicated in the time of crisis is there, because in the crisis you will require the resources, right. So, immediately getting the resources or managing the resources is difficult. So, therefore, already well planned is there. Manage the people. These competency by these leaders who manage the crisis, develop a pre-crisis simulation, right. Those trials are there, and drill plan for the crisis team and the entire organization. So, it is not like that this will be coming as a surprise, rather than they are well prepared and they are able to manage this crisis situation. Overcome the psychological roadblocks and pursue the risk realistically, can approach the crisis management planning in a logical and systematic way is there. The literature suggests that organizations with early crisis identification systems, now that is very important is, right. So, like it is a disaster management is there. So, therefore, whenever there is earthquake and if you get the notice in area there is a flood and you get weather notice is there, that is, and then what happens, that is you are well prepared is there. So, early crisis identification are to be prepared, systems are to be prepared. So, in the HR and behavior also you can plan for this type of these identification system, and those are called the HR indicators. I call that as a HR indicator. So, from the HR indicators you can, if you are having the strong indicators, no, so you will know that is this particular employee will create a crisis, right. So, therefore, in that case that much expertise is required. So, that identification of the systems and the crisis management plans already in place before the occurrence of a crisis, and suddenly that employee creates a problem. So, then you know that is how to manage that particular crisis and well better prepared to manage and survive a crisis event. These better prepared organizations have the opportunity to reposition themselves and turn a crisis event into a strategic opportunity is there, and therefore, if they are enough smart, they will convert this crisis situation as an opportunity. Organization's readiness to respond to a crisis is a function of the following: the skills, abilities and experience of a designated crisis leader, and therefore, in that case this particular organization's readiness about developing the skills, especially the technical skills, right. So, in that case that skills and abilities. So, there is a job knowledge and doing the job, or that is the in the case of managerial aspect is there. What skills do we have, what abilities they have, so they can manage this particular crisis. Simple example is of that is diversification of the product. So, suddenly if this report comes that is your organization is not able to survive unless and until you do not have the diversification. So, therefore, in that case designated crisis leader will be there. A trained and well prepared crisis team is there, right, and therefore, it is the already you are having the team who will handle this particular crisis. Organizational preparedness through the regular drills and training is there, that we see the firefighting. And in the firefighting training they keep on giving the training. So, when in case unfortunately if there is a fire, then this team is ready and then they are ready to use the extinguishers and cover all these management practices for this particular crisis situation. So, adequate organizational resources, that is man, machine, material, money and methods. So, the top management support and commitment is required. Now, you see that is the decisions will be taken and decisions may be sometimes wrong, sometimes right, and therefore, in that case if there is any wrong decision by mistake, then the top management support and commitment is required. Crises by nature are not part of the regular work experience. Therefore, touch wood, it should not be a regular work experience, and therefore, effectively managing crisis situations requires leaders to do well prepared for the unknown is there, because it is not known. The benefits of a crisis plan. Though suffering some loss is almost unavoidable, having a crisis plan in the event of an actual crisis has several benefits, and having a crisis plan in place, right. Reduce the duration of a crisis, enhance or retain a corporation's reputation, allow for quick and effective responses, improve communications, enhance coordination and the cooperation among the team members, ensure ready and available resources. So, whatever the resources are required at time to managing the crisis, so then that they are available, ensure fewer costly mistakes are there, right. So, therefore, maybe certain costly mistakes are there, and then in that case how you will be overcoming for that particular crisis situation. So, you should have that plan. Ensure less panic. Otherwise, what happens if it is a sudden shock, a sudden experience, then definitely people will be becoming more panic. But if their mind is prepared that this crisis may come, they will have the less panic. Ensure quicker resolution of the crisis, and therefore, in that case whatever the crisis situation is there, crisis is crisis. Even if you are able to control, you have to see that you are having the permanent solution, quicker solution resolution of the crisis is there. Limit or protect the financial loss. Ultimately, it is the business entity, and therefore, we have to minimize the losses in a crisis situations are there. So, pre-crisis, leading during a crisis and adopting after a crisis is there. Whenever we are talking about the pre-crisis planning is there, then crisis response team is there. So, therefore, they have been well trained, well guided, well supervised, that is if situation will occur, what you are supposed to do. Develop the crisis plan. So, therefore, if the crisis, even then in that case the crisis occurs, right, then definitely you are supposed to take actions as per the discussions meetings held before the crisis has arisen. Leading during a crisis. Now, but in spite of all this, if there is a crisis, the role of the senior leaders become very important, because they have to find out the solution to this crisis management is there, and if with the effective crisis communication, there will be the crisis resolution will be there and the problem will be solved. Adopting after a crisis, now the crisis is over, but what the lessons of learning? Lessons of learning, evaluation of the crisis response, lessons learned from this particular experience, and the preventing a future crisis. That is how in the future, if again there is a crisis, how we can prevent ourselves is there on the basis of the past experience. So, therefore, on the basis of the past experience, we should prepare the roadmap for the future prevention and control. Now, these every organizations which is a large and small for profit or non-profit organization have a pre-crisis plan, develop a pre-crisis plan that would accurately anticipate, because we are not aware what will, for example, the earthquake at the what pace will be there, we do not know. So, therefore, in that case it is the almost we are ready for that, but not exactly. So, there will be the anticipate and address will be there in the whatever is the future plan is there, then that will be we have to find out as per the future plan we can minimize the negative consequences of any crisis. Hope for the best and plan for the worst. So, therefore, this is the funda. So, funda is this, that is the always that we will be able to manage the crisis. So, if you remember, that is the there are so many disaster crises are there in Uttarakhand, right, and then in that case always it was the belief that we will be able to solve and then they minimize the losses, right. So, therefore, that planning for the worst is there. So, after some experiences, that is the now the government is so well prepared and is able to control this type of the crisis, right, on the basis of the past experiences and disaster experiences, right. So, therefore, in that case that how the same thing is there in the family also. So, suppose any crisis occurs, then if we are well prepared and we are well planned, because we know that a crisis can come any time, then definitely in that case that our response to that particular crisis will be much better. So, do we have a crisis response team who will be in the front line? Yes. What is your crisis plan of control, right? Do we have all the necessary resources in place? That is to be ensured. And now, do we have a crisis response team and who is on it? So, therefore, in that case what will be the crisis plan? For example, simple example of economic recession is there, that is also a crisis situation. So, our the production, finance, marketing, HR executives, are they working together? Having a standing crisis response team increases an organization's ability to respond to a crisis in a timely and effective manner is there. So, if economic recession is there and our team will be able to manage that particular crisis. A crisis response team should involve a good mix of representatives, as I mentioned, finance also, marketing also, operations also, and HR also. So, from all parts of the organization, diversity in the makeup of the crisis response team increases diverse input that contributes to the better decisions are there. So, always we have to make this the heterogeneous group, right, and whenever we are having the heterogeneous group, the heterogeneous group will be that is contributing for the better decisions. In the event of a crisis, a leader wants a team that has trained and worked together. So, during pre-crisis planning, questions or information flow and chains of command are addressed. So, therefore, always we have the strong the pre-crisis planning. So, involve all the people, let them ask the questions, let them be available online, and during the pre-crisis planning, the questions and information flow already ready and you have the answers for that. Now, our plan of action is also important. Only thing, this should not be only on the document, right, rather than it should be well written. So, it involves imagining the worst possible scenario that could happen to the organization and the impact on employees, customers and other stakeholders is there. So, to be well prepared, the crisis plan must incorporate as many potential emergency situations as much possible, and therefore, in that case those resources for managing the crisis that we should manage in advance. The crisis leader and the team should then assess the risk of these potential events and evaluate their possible ramifications are there. So, always this crisis leader, what they do, that is they are making the team, and this leader and team are there always those who are for the any such type of events, they are ready, and therefore, they are coming with the possible ramifications are there. For each crisis scenario, the crisis team tries to imagine the responses of different stakeholders group, which enhances preparation and reduces the level of confusion, anxiety and frustration that often ensures. So, normally what happens, that is our team should be so strong, so they can identify that who are the people, those who will be enhancing the preparation, and that reduces the level of confusion. So, level of confusion should not be there, because our team members those who to whom we have selected, they are already clear with that is what type of these issues are going to be emerge in crisis, and therefore, that anxiety and frustration, right, that will be minimized. Do we have all the necessary resources in place? Both financial and non-financial resources are needed to manage. So, I always talk about that the main machine 6 M's, man, machine, material, money and method. Now, here whenever we are talking about the financial, so we are talking about that money, and whenever we are talking about the non-financial resources are concerned. So, therefore, in that case whatever the methods we are using, and then methods that will be minimizing the cost of our that particular operation. So, all these aspects that we are able to create that we should be manage the resources in plant. So, we are well prepared, it is not unprepared, we are well prepared is there. So, people, technology and equipment, no? These people, technology and equipment to near may even been deployed to see how well they function together, and that is also very important. So, many times we see the fire extinguishers are placed, but at the time of fire it is difficult to get to start that particular fire extinguisher, even people do not know. So, therefore, in that case that is the near and deployed to see how well they are functioning together. If they are not functioning, what will be the outcome? And they, so this underscores the importance of training and drills that stimulate the actual crisis situations. So, these drills are to be done. So, that is in actual crisis situations we are ready. In the event of a crisis, the pre-crisis plan is put into the action, and the crisis leader and his team have to step forward and manage the crisis. So, that is a preventive step, and the people should be well prepared in advance, and those who are leading this step of the crisis, they are called the crisis leaders. So, they are expertise in managing the crisis. So, while leading during the crisis is concerned, the crisis leader must step forward and lead. The effective leader focuses on 3 key areas: goal, people and resources. What is that is the specific outcomes and objective of the crisis interventions, what is going to be happen. People define the who is getting the right people in the right position with the right teams, right. So, therefore, in that case who will be the responsible for managing the this crisis, it is known, and resources define the how, determining how resources will be allocated to the right people and how they will be employed, such resources are there, and therefore, in that case this will be the always the situation, right, that is the whether it the all resources, right, that is we are in the hands of the right people, and they are able to use those such resources are for the organization managing the crisis. So, there are the three key principles of the crisis leadership: stay engaged and lead from the front, focus on the big picture and communicate the vision, work with the crisis management team. You know? So, therefore, always leader themselves they should be at the front, they should work with the crisis management team and always focuses on the picture and communicate the vision of that how this team is going to work. So, another way of saying this is for the crisis leader to be the mindful, right, of the three A's: acknowledge or admit the crisis, action you are taking to contain or repair the damage, and tell the public what you are going to do to avoid a repeat in the future. And therefore, in that case it is always has been told to your team members, right, that is the yes that is always mindfulness of these leaders, they are ready, right. So, acknowledge, admit and action, these 3 A's are very important, and that you are going to do to avoid a repeat in the future is there. So, that is required to be handled. Now, suppose that crisis is over, then adopting the after a crisis, an effective post crisis evaluation can turn a negative event into a growth and the learning experience. This is also very important. So, many times the tough situation they make you more strong, right. So, you become stronger. So, because that from what happens with this tough situation, you learn how to handle the tough situation, and therefore, that learning experience what you have learned by handling this particular situation and you have overcome that particular situation. So, that will making you the more powerful. So, most forwarded looking organizations do a post mortem. And that is in the aftermath of the crisis, top management authorizes a review, and the review should include performance indicators such as the effectiveness in communicating with the key stakeholder groups. So, earlier we have talked about that there should be a proper effective communication group is to be there, but whether that has been the effective or not. Effectiveness in addressing the root cause of the crisis. So, whether it is only the symptom of the crisis is treated or the root cause of the crisis is treated. Crisis team effectiveness, in the preparation we have talked about, that is we have to work in the team, we have to create a crisis team, but whether that team has been the effectiveness or not while handling the crisis. Leadership effectiveness, the person who was at the front, right, was he able to influence the behavior, and the effectiveness in dealing with the victims and family members. So, that is about how it has been the becoming the effectiveness for the family members are there. So, when we are talking about the 5 step the crisis risk assessment model is there, crisis management, right, identify the risk, what is the risk are there. So, there will be the criteria. So, this model is a scenario analysis and planning tool that highlights different contingencies and put together crisis management action plan is there. So, risk assessment and the ranking is there, that is what type of the risk is there and what type of the crisis rank is there. Risk reducing strategies. So, if there is a risk, then how we can minimize that particular crisis. Pre-crisis simulation and drill plan. So, therefore, if the crisis occurs, how we will be responding to that particular situation, that will be the pre-crisis simulation plan is there, and the crisis management is there. So, ultimately you are managing that particular crisis. So, therefore, if you are able to manage these planning preparation, now you must have seen this is the also common with the negotiation, right. So, therefore, that your leadership in negotiation and leadership in crisis both are requiring your preparation and prevention, and both are having the teams, right. So, therefore, it is always better that is you are having the enough the preparation so that if that situation arises or when you are going through that particular phase, then you are well prepared. So, this also we can learn from the research practices. This is the paper title is leveraging culture and leadership in crisis management. Now, this is another important point that is about the organization culture. So, whether the organization culture is to get this prevention practices or not, and well planning practices or not. Many organizations are ignoring this type of the possibilities of this crisis, and therefore, in that case if that culture is not there, it will be very difficult for leader to control the crisis. But if there is a culture is there, that is identifying the crisis situations and then well preparation for these facing these situations, making the team, managing the resources, then definitely in that case that will be a proper crisis management will be there. So, here 4 types of the leaderships are included. So, organizational crisis management, right, that is the also here that 5 stages life cycle which we have talked about, that is detection, prevention, damage containment, recovery and the learning is there. So, after that crisis also we are able to learn, that is the what exactly we and documentation. So, whenever we are talking about this crisis management, we will forget after 5 years that was the situation. For example, this disaster occurred in Uttarakhand, right, and it is well documented, and therefore, after almost more than the 7 years. So, we can see that is the yes that with the help of those documentation we are better prepared. So, this time it will not be that much losses, right, touch wood it would not be there, but in the case something goes wrong, crisis comes. It is a natural crisis. So, therefore, in that case we are prepared. So, what leadership is required? Directive, transactional, cognitive and transformational, that are the critical during the crisis management. 5 research propositions have been proposed to each stage of the crisis management is there. So, proposition 1, proposition 2, proposition 3, proposition 4 and the proposition 5 is there, right. So, research limitations and implications are there. So, naturally every research is having certain the limitations and implications and this will be the originality of this particular paper, right. So, always this type of papers and research papers if you go through, we find that is we are able to develop the leadership competencies and crisis prone culture is there and organizations are well prepared. So, there should be the focus on this particular type of leadership also in the organization. So, organizations will be well prepared and losses and especially the manpower loss, that will be minimum when we are well planned and prepared for the prevention of this type of losses is there. This is the case study about the Antonio Perez Eastman Kodak is there, so is the chairman CEO, right, and born in Spain, went to and graduated from college, right, instrument transforming the HP's inkjet printer business division from a money losing to a money making operation is there. So, therefore, Perez was the passed over as a choice to the company CEO in 2003, right. So, he resigned. Kodak, the once innovative digital giant is there which has been started, right, and we know all of us that is the they have brought to the first digital camera in 1975 and was now being the left behind in the digital revolution is there. So, whatever has been done in the these companies were much faster innovating and responding to the market demands as there. So, here that Sony, Nikon, Canon, Olympus, right. So, they are becoming the more fast in the market demands are there. Debt Eastman Kodak was filing for chapter 11 bankruptcy protection that is the in 2012, right. Embarked an aggressive restructuring strategy to cost while diversifying into new business sectors to increase revenues are there. Many investors believe Perez was not acting fast enough in the transformation plans. He was criticized for acting too slow in the winding the down operations and making the layoffs that the company needed to survive before it was an unavoidable bankruptcy. So, whatever the steps were required for that the Kodak or the Perez was the too late. However, the board of directors thought differently. Perez it said will remain CEO for 1 year post bankruptcy emergence or until the post emergence board of directors elect this successor whichever is sooner. And Kodak emerged from bankruptcy and its restructuring on September 3, 2013. Kodak has transformed into a business to business company focused on the imaging. It describes itself as a company centered on disruptive technologies and breakthrough the solutions for the product goods packaging is there and graphic communications. And it seems providing his critics wrong for those who thought Perez was risking his own survival by taking a stake at Kodak's survival, time may prove them wrong. So, once traded for the just cents to the dollar is now back over $7.27 a share, right. And what are some of the changes Mr. Perez instituted to avoid a repeat of a similar crisis in the future. So, this is a very interesting case study which will help you to understand that is the how that the leadership of Perez that has handled the situations. As usual, this is the book is recommended 7 lessons for the leading in crisis. So, leadership in crisis this will be the book 7. It is a face reality starting with yourself. Do not be Atlas, get the Atlas a word off your shoulders, dig deep for the root cause, get ready for the long haul, never waste a good crisis. You are in the spotlight, follow the north and go on offense, focus on the winning now. So, therefore, never get discouraged, always try to come out with this type of the crisis situations, learn from that experience and go ahead, right. So, and these are the references from the text material taken and for your further studies is there. Thank you.